You know, my expectation getting into this was going to be a 5-year, $500,000 project. We had to switch architects at some point. We had a Panama architect, then we switched to a different Panama architect, then we switched to a U.S. architect. We ultimately had a lawsuit with the U.S. architect over a billing dispute. We went with $500,000, and then the first thing the architect came back with was $1.5 million, and that was just for the first building. And this project was supposed to have multiple buildings. Instead of 5 years and $500,000, it turned out to be close to $8 or $9 million total in this project. We got sued by locally in Panama. And the primary premise was that we were taking too long and it was fraud because we had taken this guy's property off of his land and to build his clinic, and we never built it. The expectation of the Panamanians was that this was going to be done right away. And so almost every time I went down there, it was have a meeting with the group to talk about when's this going to be done. And the answer is, I don't know. And I remember him saying, you need to come down here right now. Everyone is angry. The town is angry because this project's not built yet. Some of them were kind of actually hostile. My name is Jason Moore. I am an emergency room doctor, and I grew up in Ohio. Did my training in Nashville, and then in Toledo, Ohio, and then up in Detroit, Michigan. And Detroit, Michigan is where I did my residency in emergency medicine. And then that's ultimately how I got involved in the mission work here, is through the church there in Detroit. So I was doing my training in emergency medicine, and then involved in the church, and ultimately wanted to start to use the I guess the knowledge that God was giving me and opportunities to start to apply that, in a Christian way. Obviously I was in my training still, so by no means was I a full-fledged doctor, and didn't of course feel comfortable being offering independent medical care, but basically wanted to use what I had available and what I could to glorify God, and basically as sort of in a service to Him. And so the emergency aspect is in a sense, actually, when I first started doing that, when I first got involved in mission work, it was part of my vacation time in my training. The year before that, I had gone to Romania. That was actually my first mission trip, was an evangelistic mission trip to Romania. I guess opened up my areas of possibility there mentally, and I thought, that's kind of, I like that, and maybe when I think about how would I like to use this 2 weeks of vacation, and the year before I'd gone to Romania, I thought, now that I got a little bit of, medical training, maybe there's something medical that I could do. So that's when we started to look into it and see what opportunities were out there. And so, we found a place in Guatemala that was, because I had to do it during those weeks, and I had a minister that was very important in my faith, and he was a mentor to me in a lot of ways. His name was Clifford Tucker, and he was he was in his 90s, I believe, at the time, or late 80s, early 90s, and he encouraged me in that, and so to kind of get involved in the medical missions strategy. And he had been actually involved in mission work in Venezuela in his time, in the 1960s, actually. So he had kind of a heart for that himself, and he said, hey, why don't you do that? And so we started to look around, and he had some contacts, and so, I'm basically a babe in the woods, just kind of going where I'm pointed here, and I had, I guess, maybe the zeal and ready to go, but not really knowing what to do. And so I, just kind of followed the guidance, and that's how we got involved in it. So there was a place in Guatemala that was pretty well set up organization. It was a mission work. They had it was sort of a missions base. So they had built through a foundation, they had built in the middle of the jungle, really, a medical complex that was essentially a missions base to allow an ongoing, and they had a dormitory with it. They had a church building across the street, and they just had ongoing mission trips from people from different parts of the country coming down to do medical trips. And they also had an ongoing church going there, as well as a sort of a home medical team that was local and doing ongoing work, in addition to hosting these groups that were coming in. So it's just kind of getting a little bit of a taste of it, and knowing what mission work is like, and did a little bit of medical work with it, and that was very educational. So, and it was inspiring, and it made me kind of fired up to do it again. Well, then the next year, same 2-week block. So I was kind of, by then I guess I had the bug. So I said, well, let's go back to Panama. And this time we went out to the eastern jungle aspect, or the rural area, instead of the city area where we went the first time. And so it was the second year. And the second year we actually got all excited about it. We went around and went to a few different churches. I think it was mainly from our base church in Royal Oak, Michigan, that we got a smaller group together. Actually, no, I take that back. We had people from different churches at that time. Church where I grew up in Ohio, and then in Michigan, and we may have had a few different churches at that time. But we had a decent-sized group, and we also had people coming from the southern states, and so we built a church building there, and we had did some smaller construction projects, and we did sort of a mobile medical clinic and a bunch of other activities there. And I think we might have even done distributed some clothing then. So we got together a big semi-trailer, basically a container that we shipped down ahead of time, and we shipped some pews down there that we had donated from a church building that was getting rid of it. So we were really fired up, and we were doing a whole lot of visiting other churches and getting other people active, and it was very encouraging. And God worked through all of us to just sort of, it's kind of light you on the inside to be able to realize what's possible. And there was a man named Larry Brady who had been going to Panama for many years, decades actually, before I even met him. And he's the one who kind of allowed me to get involved in Panama. And he was my guide and the person to set things up in Panama. And so after that, I'd kind of run things by him, and we'd talk about it and plan it. And I said, hey, this thing in Guatemala was a really nice setup, a nice model. why don't we try to do the same thing? And he was all in for it, and so we got it started. And that was that would have been about 2004 was when we had that mission trip, and then after that is when we started the project. And so the plan would be the following year to actually bring another group down, but in the meantime we were working on the project. And then it's actually kind of funny because I've just been reading recently in Hebrews talking about how Noah did not know what was going to be in front of him, but he started to build anyway. Abraham was called, but he did not know where he's going, so he just starts going. And I kind of reflect on that a little bit, and I think a lot of that is what, that's what God's calling us in terms of faith, is that we don't know what's in front of us, but if we have the faith in God and we know that, we have our eyes set on Him, there's not a fear there, and we just sort of start. And that's really how it got started. There was nothing. I mean, basically, Larry Brady had the Panama mission structure, but it wasn't formalized with, so a lot of the paperwork and things that had to be done to set up a project like that. So we want to build this project. Well, we need an architect for that. We need to get some land for that. We need to, if people are going to donate, we're going to have to set up a corporate structure so that people can, who are they going to write the check to, and should it be to a church? Should it be to something separate to a church? There's a lot that we had to kind of process and how to structure this. And ultimately, we made mistakes, and it's just something where I also talked to the people in Guatemala and kind of got a sense from them. How much did this cost you? How long did it take? Where'd the money come from? They had a whole different setup than the way that their project went forward than the way ours did. The labor kind of came on me, which is fine, and I was ready to take it on and do it, but a lot of it was trying to learn the advice of how to do it. And we need to set up a 501c3. Well, how do you do that? I don't know. I mean, there was a lady in our church who was an accountant, and I remember we sat down in her kitchen and we went through a lot of this paperwork and figured it all out and getting that application submitted. Then we wanted to organize a trip. So organizing a mission trip is a lot of work, a lot of details, a lot of people involved with that. And then, of course, trying to get into churches to go speak to those churches, that's not the easiest thing a lot of times, We'll distribute thousands of boxes of, well, I don't know boxes, but it probably was thousands over the course of the years. But we would fill a whole 40-foot container of clothes that we donated. Well, where do those clothes come from? Well, and how did they get in those boxes and then get in that container? Well, I mean, it's not me. It's multiple people, and then there's people packing and organizing those clothes. It's actually, and this is one of those things, and I remember the moment. It was actually pretty moving, because it's one of these things where you say, "Wow, I can't believe this is happening." We're sitting in one of the church buildings, which is closer to Panama City, and we're sort of just visiting there. They wanted to talk to us, and Cristobal goes out to talk to them, and I still remember that moment when Cristobal came up, and he was like in disbelief himself, and he says, so basically this group of people that just pulled up to this church building, none of us knew them. Keep in mind, would be 2004, which means we were just talking about it. We had not done anything, announced anything. Somehow these folks had gotten wind of it, and what they had done is they went around in their community, and I guess they got like petitions and went from door to door and got donations within their community completely on their own, and they came to us and said, we have 3 plots of land that you can put this project on, and it's yours for free. Just choose which one you want. If you put it on there. We didn't even know, when we were going down there, we didn't know where we were going to go. We didn't know how we were going to get this, nothing. And it just arrives where these people just find us and then hey, we're like, we didn't even know that you guys knew that we were doing this. We didn't know who you are. And yet they just, it literally is one of those things where it's like they fall out of the sky and here's the answer to your problem. And so basically they took us out there to the land, and they showed us the land, and we said, yeah, I mean, this is actually perfect. This plot is right on the, there's only one main road that goes all along Panama, and the Pan American Highway, and this was right on that road. It was a perfect location. And so at that point, we just continued to advance it and started talking with an architect down there, and then we started to see, well, who can help to implement some of these things in terms of who's actually going to make the construction happen, because, you know, I'm in the U.S., and so we had some fundraiser, organizational things in the U.S. to try and start the ball rolling. We had some fundraiser sort of meetings, had a group of the preachers and other people from the church in Panama, tell them about the project, get them excited, just started to publicize it a little bit. And so by the time that mission trip came in August of 2005, I think we had 105 travelers, which was wonderful. Our goal, it's amazing how, and I still remember this because I remember setting the sights in my own mind. We want to bring 100 people down there as soldiers for Christ, and God brought 105. And so it's kind of like it's almost like a confirmation that according to your faith be it unto you. In other words, if you want to put your limits there, well, then that's what God's going to give you. If you're going to put it there, then you can get that too. You want to put it there, in other words, the limitation is you. And so I kind of, in my mind, took that as a sort of a spiritual lesson. It's like, okay, we set it at 100 and God gave us over 100. That was a difficult trip because we were not ready to take 100 travelers down there, and there's a lot of logistics to work out, so there was some challenge. But the reality is, I think God blessed it. We had a groundbreaking ceremony there, but let's say that's August of 2005. From just say July, August of 2004, in that intervening year, we were doing this preparation work. So by the time the travelers got down there, we had already had architect meetings, we'd already had some preliminary plans. We had the initial sort of earth movement work, getting down to the sort of the foundational ground that you're going to start to build on. So a lot of that had already been laid out, so that by the time, and the plan was that there would be people coming and the workers who would be part of the construction crew. So by the time they got down there, it was, a lot of it was kind of ready to go for them. I remember we went around and we prayed over the land. And we sung some songs and hymns, and basically, in other words, with a sense of God bless this land and bless this project, and we tried to make it as a godly a project as we could. And God was just opening that up, having a politician come and having people from all over. We had thousands of people from the community come, were involved in it, not just for the mission part of it, but also they wanted to see what was going on there. The ultimate goal in all the work that we're doing here is bringing the power of Jesus Christ to every person. And so we're starting here. The vision is really to take a place in the middle of poverty, in a place of a lot of needs, and begin to minister and address those needs. We really have an opportunity here to affect a lasting change on the lives of so many people in the name of Jesus. And so our mission behind all this is to build a medical clinic, a church combined with that medical clinic to address spiritual needs and bring the power of Jesus to them. In the same way that Jesus walked about meeting physical needs and spiritual needs, our vision here is to bring physical and spiritual needs together in a very powerful and effective way. And so everything that we want to do here is done in excellence, from the beginning levels on, to do it with excellence in every step of the building, every aspect of the way we operate, every aspect of the way we interact with people, the way we do business, the way we bring people to Christ. Every aspect of what we do needs to be done with excellence in a way that glorifies Jesus, in a way that He would be glorified.
At one point, this container came all but 6 feet short to the ceiling, all the way out to here. We've given away this much close so far. This is roughly 55, 60 feet of container space. We're down to this much. We'll probably go through these 2 rows today. The state representative or senator is going to see to it that those clothes go to the communities in the mountains where they have absolutely nothing, and there's a great need for the clothing to go there. So that's what the abundance is going to be for this year. You know, I could see the need, and I said, this is what I'll do. You know, I could be doing the mission work, I could be spreading the gospel. I'm taking care of a need that is very, very close to my heart. It just overwhelms you. You've got to try this, you've got to do this and see for it yourself.
Cement floor for a person that had a wood floor kitchen that was just rotting. $38. Made him the happiest man in the camp.
$38.
Brought him to tears and then brought us to tears.
Amen.
Building a house for these guys. I'll remember that the rest of my life.
We're going every 4 homes.
This Habitat for Humanity Panama style? House,
That's exactly what it is.
house in a week, huh?
That's right. For $1,000.
Fishy swim, who made the fishy swim? God in heaven above. Why? Who made both you and I? God in heaven above.
If you're trying to raise money, the first question is how much money do you need? And so you can't get that accurate number until you can actually get some real plans and actually get it laid out in a real manner. So we went with 500,000, and then the first thing the architect came back with was 1.5 million, and that was just for the first building. And this project was supposed to have multiple buildings. And so, I remember sitting in the hospital, working on the computer and going through my emails and getting that email and just almost collapsing. Just 1.5 million, you gotta be kidding me, huh? There's no way. In the end, it turned to be, instead of 5 years and 500,000, it turned out to be probably close to $8 or $9 million total in this project, when our initial thought was 500,000. So, as you can imagine, there was a lot of mental adjustment that I needed to make as this was going along. And of course, that was a source of a lot of distress for me personally, because I think the expectation of the Panamanians was that this was going to be done right away. And so almost every time I went down there, it was have a meeting with the group to talk about when's this going to be done. And the answer is, I don't know. There's a lot that has to happen first. Some of them were kind of actually hostile. I remember I was going down in Panama and we were meeting, and I almost got physically assaulted by people saying, "Why have you not built this project yet? What's the problem? Is it money? You just say it. You don't have the money?" And almost like an accusational thing, and I'm like, yeah, that is the thing. There's not the money. If we had the money, you could put this stuff together pretty quick, a lot faster. We even got sued. Actually, Panamanian, we got sued by locally in Panama. And the primary premise was that we were taking too long and it was fraud because we had taken this guy's property off of his land and to build his clinic, and we never built it. And I remember him saying, "You need to come down here right now. Everyone is angry. The town is angry because this project's not built yet." And I'm like, what do you mean? What am I going to do? I'm going to come down here and say, it's coming soon? In other words, I can't make the thing materialize. We're working on this. There's so many different stages to this type of thing, and ultimately it depends on the money. And then trying to get the architect, we had to switch architects at some point. We had a Panama architect, then we switched to a different Panama architect, then we switched to a U.S. architect. We ultimately had a lawsuit with the U.S. architect over a billing dispute. Then we went back to the Panama architect, and it just became a, all that takes time and money, and in the meantime, you have the community there saying, hey, where's the clinic? You know, and so we would have to show them pictures. I remember there's a guy, Walt Milky was his name in the Royal Oak Church. He was an artist guy, and he drew some like really artistic, nice renderings of what the clinic would look like, which ultimately now architects do all through the computer and everything, but he did it all handmade, which is very pretty. But anyway, just trying to show people this is what we have in mind, this is what it can look like, and that's all we could give to them at this point. But it's almost like you can only appease people so much. But then ultimately, you know, they start to see more happening. They start to see the construction happen a little bit, but you know the foundation, you know, cost a tremendous amount of money just to get that foundation in, and then we ran out of money and we had debt still, so we had to pay off that debt because we needed to get that time frame to get the foundation in. We wanted to get in by the mission trip. So, but then we're behind on the money because we had to pay all that off because we meet that time. So we had to stop construction. Then we had our project manager went to jail, and we've learned that later. And so we're just thinking, boy, this is really. And there is some, you know, internal conflicts that happened with the mission trip in 2005 with all those 100 people. And some people were happy with the trip and other people were not happy. So there's letters written to the church leadership, and it just became it was quite a stressful time for me personally during that time. Ultimately, though, I mean, these are things that basically God just works it out. And you know, it's experience that you learn how to redirect and how to continue along the same route, you know, in order to accomplish the goal. And we kept going. I can remember feeling trapped, almost like a sense of panic, like, wait a second. I thought this was going to be 5 years, $500,000. Well, we're well past $500,000, and we are nowhere near done. I guess what really kept me going is the, first of all, the commitment that I made. In other words, I said I'm going to do it, I need to do it. Our word has to mean something. If I step back and I look at some of the different mission works that I've been exposed to, or charities, even you think of big charities, big name charities, when are they done? In other words, if I'm thinking in my life, how do I finish this? When is it finished? And that was a process of exploration to figure out how is this going to be finished. I've learned a tremendous amount doing this. I mean, in so many different ways, but one of the ways is, of course, understanding a perspective from a different culture. And one of the things that was realizing along the way that we needed to focus what we're doing. When we first started, we would do like maybe a little construction project, build a house for this family here. We would distribute some food. You know, we would do some smaller projects in this area, that area. And what we realized is the best way that we're going to be able to make an impact is we have to set down roots. From our perspective, we are Americans coming down there, and we would just bring our group. And so we would descend upon an area, and we would give away a bunch of stuff for 2 weeks. We'd spend a year planning, give it all away for 2 weeks, and then go home, and we'd have some good pictures, and we all feel good, and then that was that. And I can remember some of the first experiences when I would go down there afterward, not with a group, but as sort of planning trips. And I look around and say, this place is the same as before the trip we went. In other words, we did this whole year-long thing and all this work on the U.S. side of it to do this trip, and what difference did it make? And so I had to kind of process that and say, well, how does that change what we're doing? What they're making some valid points here. So what could we do differently? If we're going to make a difference here, if we're really going to change the way the culture is, and I don't necessarily mean culture, I mean maybe the setting or the opportunity or the availability of resources. If we're going to make a difference here, we're going to have to settle. We're going to have to set down roots, and we're going to have to start having a foundation and starting to build. I could never do it. The perception from there is that the U.S. is a gigantic fountain of money, and therefore all you have to do is just ask, and the money faucet comes your way. So therefore when they even see you, they think money, and the price will go up more than what it would for otherwise a local person. And so, and ultimately I never felt like God was leading me to live there and devote my life in that setting myself. So we needed to find the person who's going to be part of that community and actually literally live there, be there, and run the project, and be that connection between us and the community. And that was Ruben Leon, and he was just a total godsend. Him and his family, Maria Esther and Wilbur and Becky and Harrison. They came from Lima, Peru, which is a big city, and they moved to a rural area in the middle of nowhere to basically, and that, you know, in terms of faith, they took only what they could carry in their suitcases. It was a big adjustment for him and his family because it was a bit of a culture shock for him. He's coming from Peru to Panama now, even though it's all, in a sense, there is sort of a basic or fundamental, I guess you'd call it Latino culture, but there's still differences between Peru and Panama and between the big city and the country. So there's adjustments that he had to make, and him and his family. And then he started, of course, getting integrated in the culture. He has some wonderful talents that God has used him to make this project happen. Be able to talk to a government official and get the permits needed, be able to talk to the architect, doesn't matter what needs to be done, he made it happen, was able to get it done. Just a very efficient, motivated guy, talented guy. And of course he was a church minister. That's how we brought him originally, was his plan to be a church minister. But it kind of metamorphosized into he did it all, basically, and he started running the project then, and he was quite good at it, and he made it happen. And him being part of the culture was absolutely critical. He knows when somebody's trying to scam you. He knows, to believe this story and not believe this story, and he knows which angle to hit here and there. Whereas if someone from an outside perspective comes in, you're just going to be walking into landmine after landmine. So that was really critical in the success of the project, was him. I mean, it couldn't have happened. I mean, I guess, God can always find his instruments in doing it, but he was a critical instrument of making it happen. The perspective at that time was I was trying to do everything. In the meantime, in doing that every 3 months or something in a trip. Well, that went for about a year or so. And then it became pretty clear we have to have somebody on the ground who can make this happen and do these things. Ultimately, Ruben became the guy who was doing the construction and the church, and then ultimately he basically just was the guy in charge of the whole project. He is the key for why we're able to disconnect and turn it over to be independent, because he basically, and I've learned this, I guess in retrospect, God was putting him through a training process. There's no way that he would be able to run the whole project from the moment he arrived there. But 2007 to 2023, basically, you have that many years of training where he's learning how construction goes, learning how the legal system goes, learning how employees, all that stuff work. So now that was a training ground for him, where now he's no problem. He can make it all happen. 2021, we finished the construction. 2022 was, a lot of that was interior finish work and equipping. So in terms of finish, I would really say the end of 2022 is when he actually, And throughout 2022, we were actually able to start to offer some services. And we could gradually, because you really can't offer those services until you have the equipment in there that's needed. So even if the construction's ready, that's just your shell that you're working in, but you got to have the equipment that you're actually going to use. And a lot of that was expensive. So over the course of 2022, we started to add more services that we're offering. And that really is the phase that it's in right now, is a lot of the people in the community don't really even know what is available there. A general medical clinic, which is sort of basically like an urgent care, essentially. We don't hospitalize people overnight. We don't, so it's not a hospital in that sense, but basically an urgent care type setting. But we can still put IVs in people. We have things we have beds where they can get different levels of treatment. So you have general medical care. We have a pediatrician that works there. We have ultrasound testing there. We have a laboratory there. We have a pharmacy there. We have a dentist. We have an orthodontics section, dental x-ray machine, which is, to my knowledge, is I think the only one in that whole half of the country. So in terms of providing that service, the lab and the x-ray machine, these folks in that area don't have anywhere else to go. And so we're getting a tremendous response when people realizing, wow, it used to be they would have to, if they don't have their own car, which a lot of people don't have their own car, they'd have to take a bus to the city. The city is about a 3-hour drive away. So if you want to get labs done or an x-ray done, and the way the medical system works there is you go to the doctor says, okay, well, this is what you need, writes down the labs and gives you the thing, and you got to go get it. Well, you got to figure out where you're going to get those labs done. Well, a lot of times you just have to go to the city and get it done. And then you get those results, and then you get the results, and you take it back to your doctor and say, here's the results of the labs that you ordered. Or same thing with an x-ray. So very tedious, very cumbersome, very difficult logistics to do that. And a lot of that has to be in the city 3 hours away. Well, now you have that we're offering this literally right in their community. People are really excited about it, particularly at the level that God has brought this project to. We built it to a level of finish that's quite nice. And anyone in the U.S. would be happy to get care there as well. It's a very well done, excellent facility. And our whole idea is that we want to not only have excellence in the construction and excellence in the infrastructure, but also excellence in the operations, meaning the patient flow is efficient and people don't have to wait a long time, and they get the answers they want, and they get treated well by the people and the staff, and all of that is part of the approach that we wanted to accomplish. It really basically excellence in the name of Christ, and that's almost like a motto that we would follow, that we're trying to do this as correctly and as well as possible in every aspect of it. We have set it up as a private clinic where you pay, if you want to get your cavity filled, it costs this much. If you want to get an x-ray, it costs this much. If you want to get braces, if you want to see the doctor, in other words, a fee for service. So, and it's at a level of pay or level of fees that's reasonable for the area. We're building this monstrous thing. Well, how is it going to run? Is it literally capable of being sustained from that community's perspective? The feasibility studies we've done is yes, and it really comes down to there's a lot of traffic going back and forth on that Pan American Highway, and that's also why we have sort of diversified what we're offering. We have a restaurant there. There's ideas to open up a hotel there, and a school possibly later, even a convenience store. The whole idea is to keep the income flowing that could maybe make up for any shortfalls that happen from the clinic itself. And so ultimately the number crunching that we've done, it works out. So I think it is. Now, the beautiful thing is there's no debt here. So I guess the standard way that a lot of times are done in the U.S. is you take out a giant loan, you build the whole thing quickly, and then over the course of the years you pay off the loan for the construction. Well, in this case, we built it as God gave us the funds, so there is no overhead mortgage or loan or anything that's being paid for here. I feel a sense of, I guess, gratitude to God, because there's so many ways that this could have collapsed. There's so many ways, you know, I can only do so much from my perspective, particularly United States. We could have somebody stealing our money the whole time. We could have somebody, you know, skimming off the top or you know, fraud. We could have somebody doing all kinds of, I guess, wrong things on site. Or there'd be so many ways that this thing could just break. There'd be nothing I could really do about it, or very little. It'd be a tremendous challenge. And God just protected us from that. And so I'm very thankful and almost in amazement, really, that we're actually at this point and say, wow, I mean, this is actually, literally, this is the vision from the beginning that we wanted. It just took a lot longer and didn't quite land in the same way we thought it was going to, but this is the vision. This is what we wanted, and here it is. And we went down there a few weeks ago, and in my mind, I guess what would be most satisfying to me is just to see the place filled with people getting all different services of all kinds, and they're all being done, it's all being done in the name of Christ. And that's what we saw. We probably, in one day, we had over probably close to 200 or more patients, and it was that we processed throughout several hours, and it was effortless. It wasn't congested. It wasn't unpleasant at all. It was very smooth. It was relaxed, and it was almost like it was no problem. And everything was working, and people are getting what they needed, and they're happy, and it's just a routine, just coming in, getting it, and leaving. That to me is very satisfying. And I thought, wow, this is exactly what we wanted it to be, and I'm thankful to God for that. Essentially, it's all in Ruben and his family. Ruben has now been given, through his experiences and developed in the ability, the capacity to operate on a large scale all these different operations. His son Harrison went to medical school there and is running the clinic now. His other son has gone through formal chef training in multiple countries, even, and multiple styles of restaurants, and he's running the restaurant. His daughter has gone through architectural school, and so she has been able to facilitate and make happen the ongoing construction aspects of it, or assist in making that happen. They were all talking about what the next steps are going to be, and how we're planning on this to expand this, and we're gonna grow it this way, and we're working through social media, and we're trying to get the advertising right. We're trying to hit all of the buttons. All of them are talking about how this is going to be better, and we're going to get more and more and more. There was no sense of, we're done now or anything. It was just, it was a bright outlook about what we're going to turn this into in the future. So I'm excited to see that. That would be very gratifying to me, but it's almost kind of like you wind it all up and say, see, look at that thing. Look at it go. It's going good. So that to me is where I guess I'm getting the satisfaction. And then, just sort of, I'll do what God has me do later, but whatever He has for me in the future. But to see that part, that I would say is I would call it a success, and a success for God. There's a verse that has stuck with me in Ecclesiastes, where he says, "The end of a thing is better than the beginning of a thing, and the patient in spirit is better than the prideful in spirit, or the proud in spirit." And I remember when I first came across that verse, I thought, wow, that's something. The end of a thing is better than the beginning of a thing. Well, because everybody gets excited about the beginning of things. We all get our own little projects or things. We like this idea. This is going to be full fun or whatever. And we all get excited about it. Well, getting to the end of it is another story, because there's a lot of work. There's a lot of challenges, obstacles, and things we never thought of. There's a lot of time. And so that's the key. That's why he says that in Ecclesiastes, is that because the end of a thing, you can actually see the thing accomplished. And there's a lot of satisfaction and even actually eclipses the excitement of the beginning of the thing. Is better to see the final package. It's more gratifying and more, I guess, fulfilling. Abraham was promised Isaac, and he didn't get Isaac until 25 years later. Well, 25 years is a pretty good length of time that we just sort of, you know, that's 25 years to him is the same as 25 years to us. I mean, like, where it's not happening, it's not happening, it's not happening. You know, the time it took for Noah to build the ark, but when he was promised that this is what's going to happen, but all those years, and it never happened yet. Well, so of course it takes a faith in God, and I think it's almost like it's a life skill, you know, and that is endurance. And you know, I think it applies to whether you're doing a job, whether you're talking about even a marriage relationship, or whether you're talking about a work for God. You got to just stick in. You got to do it. And you say, well, it's hard, and I don't like this, and I'm losing in this scenario, or I don't see a way out, or I don't even see where the end's coming. And well, keep going. Trust in God. Trust in that you're doing His will, and keep walking, and you'll get there. And I guess that would be the message that I would want people to look at this project and maybe take some encouragement from, that God is true, and that his perspective is much larger than ours, and we need to just keep walking and have that endurance until we reach the goal where He's laid in front of us, and it will happen.